Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar Reservoir Surveillance from Fundamentals to Reservoir Applications. It's Ahmed from Reservoir Solutions, and I'll be hosting today's session. It's a pleasure to introduce our instructor, Engineer Muhammad Abdel Ghani, a senior reservoir engineer with over 12 years of experience in reservoir surveillance, simulation, and characterization studies. He has worked across several countries, including Egypt, Turkey, and South Sudan, and holds a master's degree in reservoir engineering. He's also currently pursuing his PhD, focusing on the application of the machine learning in reservoir engineering. Now, without further delay, let's give the floor to Engineer Muhammad. Before we wrap up, during the last 15 minutes of the session, we will share the attendance form. Please make sure to fill it out to receive your webinar certificate. And in the end of the webinar, we have a special surprise for you. The first 10 people to use the coupon that we will share on the WhatsApp group of the webinar will receive an exclusive 15% discount on our upcoming course, Integrated Reservoir Surveillance and Opportunity Identification. Note that the coupon will be shared in the webinar with WhatsApp group after the session to make sure you stay until the end. Engineer Muhammad, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Ahmed, for your introduction, and thank you for everyone for attending this webinar. Just I would like to confirm, is my voice clear? You can tell me into Zoom chat if you want. Okay, thank you. Okay, so
Engineer Muhammad, the mic. We can't hear you.
sorry for this interruption. So let's continue our webinar. So we were talking that for the reservoir surveillance, we have a definition for the reservoir surveillance. Also, we have a plan for our reservoir surveillance that we should prepare for every field, according to the uncertainty for every field. After this, we will talk about some examples for the data that we are acquiring into our plan for reservoir surveillance, like the open hole logging, like the production and injection data. Also, we will talk about the well test and the cased hole logging, and we have some examples for this kind of data. So, for reservoir surveillance, so what is the definition for the reservoir surveillance and why we are doing the reservoir surveillance activity? So, actually, for the reservoir surveillance, it is starting with that we have some uncertainty. We have some uncertainty. Okay.
Can we can let's see if we can download.
Okay. So we have some uncertainty, and we wanted to answer this uncertainty, or we wanted we wanted to secure this uncertainty. Okay. So that is why we will do the reservoir surveillance. For example, into our production wells, we have the water cut is increasing. Okay, so we have some reasons for this increasing for the water. So one of the reasons for the increasing water cut is that we have the saturation of the water is increasing into our reservoir. So that is why we want to monitor the water saturation into our reservoir. Okay, so this is the opportunity that we wanted to answer. So what is the tool that we can use? One of the tools that we can use, it is running the BLT in case that we have some wells that is producing from different intervals. So because of the different intervals, so we wanted to know which interval that is producing water, this interval or this interval. So we will run a BLT that will tell us whether this interval is producing water, whether this interval is producing water. Okay, so that is one of the tools. Okay, but we have another tool like the RST. So for the RST, it will tell us about the saturation. It will tell us about the saturation. Okay, so which tool will be beneficial into our case? So that is will base about your information or about your conceptual model for your reservoir. For example, if we have the water or the into the static conditions, the saturation or the saturation is almost oil. However, into the dynamic conditions, we have increasing or we have production from certain intervals. Maybe that because of behind the casing flow, okay, that will be indicated by the temperature log. Okay, so that is example for some questions, some uncertainty that we wanted to answer. Okay. So first of all, we wanted to define the uncertainty that we wanted to answer according or into our reservoir. Another example for in case that we wanted to do some, we wanted to apply some technology into our reservoir. For example, we wanted to apply water injection. Okay, so to apply the water injection, we wanted to know what is the existing depth for the oil water contact. So existing depth for the oil water contact, again, it can be determined by the MDT into some wells. Okay, in case that we have our reservoir is like this, and we are drilling some wells. So into this wells we can have measurement for the MDT that will tell us what is the existing oil water contact. Okay, this is one of the tools that we can use to acquire or to know what is the existing depth for the oil water contact. Maybe in some cases you can do or you can use the well test. For the well test, actually, from the log, it can tell us the constant pressure boundary that will be representing the distance from our well to the oil water contact, based on which we can determine the oil water contact depth. Okay, so that is some tools, different tools for the reservoir surveillance, based on which you will select the tool that will give you the best answer. Okay, so it is starting with identify the risk or the objective or the decision that you want to take, based on which we will create a surveillance plan, okay. So after this, we will execute this plan, and after the data that we are receiving from our surveillance plan, we will improve our conceptual model, our reservoir characterization information. Then, based on which we will take some decision to apply some technology, to do some work over, to drill additional wells, and so on. Okay. So, so first of all, we will set the uncertainty or the decisions, the objective. We will set the surveillance plan. Okay, surveillance plan means that how many, for example, how many well tests that you want to perform, and at which time, and for which wells. Okay, and what will be the associated cost to will be booked into the budget for the company. Also, which wells that you want to select for certain or to apply or to use some tools, and what if or what are the results or what are the dependent actions according to the results for this surveillance. Okay, this is the reservoir surveillance plan. So, for example, examples for the uncertainties that we have about the connectivity for the faults. So, the connectivity for the faults, it can be determined by acquiring the MDT into the both sides of the faults. Okay, based on which you can take a decision to drill step out wells or infill wells. Maybe that also you have uncertainty about the aquifer volume. Okay, so you want to do some well test that will tell you about the aquifer volume and the aquifer strength, or you want to acquire some static pressure space that help you to do some material balance analysis that will help you to know what is the aquifer volume and the aquifer strength. Maybe that you have some problems related to the sweep efficiency. You have a new wells, or then this new wells is having oil intervals. However, after some period of the production, after short period of the production, you have increasing water cut. So you wanted to enhance your information or your information about the ratio or the anisotropy between the vertical permeability, the horizontal permeability, what also the sweep efficiency for the water against the oil. Maybe that you have water injection and you wanted to enhance the sweep efficiency. So in that case, maybe that you can apply a tracer injection, okay, to know which production wells that are affected by a certain injections. Maybe that you want to also to run some BLT into the production and the injection wells to see which zone that is most affected by this water injection, and so on. Different examples for the uncertainty that we wanted to identify or we wanted to secure based on the reservoir surveillance. Then coming to the second step, it will be the surveillance program. So for the surveillance program, actually, we can define the data acquisition to three parts. First, the routine surveillance. Second, which is the targeted surveillance. Third, it will be the project-based or the opportunities. What is the meaning for this? For example, for the routine surveillance, every company, every day, we will have a well test for a group of wells. Okay, that can be, or this can be called the routine surveillance. Every day we are receiving a pressure or ESP data like the hertz, like the intake pressure, like the discharge pressure, the wellhead pressure, and so on. Okay, so this data is routinely recorded every day. So that is why we are calling the routine surveillance for our field. And usually for the cost for this surveillance, it is booked under the OPEX into your company, and you don't need to book a separate cost for this data acquisition. Then coming to the second type, which is the targeted surveillance. So targeted surveillance, it is not a data that is every day is recorded. You are targeting to use a certain service company to report, for example, a static bottom hole pressure, or do a build-up test into a certain wells. So you are selecting a certain wells in which you are doing a pressure test, or you want to do some follow-up test into some injectors, you want to do BLT. So this all of these items, or all of this tools, you are not using every day. That is why we are calling targeted surveillance. Okay, targeted surveillance. And for this kind of data, you should book a cost into your budget to be accounted into the company budget. Then coming to the third type of the data, which is the opportunistic or the project specific. What is the meaning for this? For example, you are now drilling a new well. So, and you have uncertainty about the oil water contact. So in that case, it is an opportunity to measure or to use the MDT data to acquire pressure points into the aquifer interval, to know at the aquifer interval and the oil interval, to know what is the existing depth for the oil water. Maybe that now you are measuring, or you want to test a new zone, okay? And it is we have now a work over into a certain well. So now you have opportunity again to test this zone, okay, into this well, okay? So based on which you can acquire this data. For example, for the core data, if you have a new well, so for this it is an opportunity to acquire core data that will enhance our information or our reservoir characterization, like the relation between the porosity, the permeability, the relative permeability, in case that you want to do water flooding experiment. So now you have the opportunity to acquire a core data. So for all of this data, when you set it into your surveillance plan that will be presented to the management, you are mentioning how many core that you want to acquire, what is the associated cost, and what is the impact when you pick this data. For example, the score data will help us to set whether the water flooding it will be beneficial for our case or not. And in case that the water flooding is beneficial, it is expected that we can have incremental into our production, like 2 million barrels, 3 million barrels, and so on. Okay, so now you can tell the management how important this core data for you. Okay, and the third part for the reservoir surveillance plan, it will be the well selection. For example, you can say that we wanted to acquire a pressure data into the north area for our field. Why? Because into the north area we don't have a wells, or we don't have pressure data. So we wanted to acquire a pressure data into this region of our field. Okay. For example, we wanted to acquire cased hole logging like the RST. Why? Because the RST it will tell us whether the oil water contact depth between the north, the central, and the south sector for our field is same or not. Maybe in some cases you have a tilted oil water contact. For example, if we have a well, this well into the central, this is into the north, and this is into the south. And for the north well, it has much production than the other sectors. So in that case, we can expect that the oil water contact it will be tilted, okay, because the production into the north field or the north sector is much than the production into the central, and much more than the production into the south. Okay, so we wanted to know what is the existing depth for the oil water contact, based on which we can locate some opportunities for the workover or the infill drilling. Okay, so that is the part for the reservoir surveillance. And coming to the last part for our reservoir surveillance plan, which is the action based on the results for this reservoir surveillance data. For example, for the injectors, in case that you see that we have a decline into the injectivity for the injectors about more than 20%. So what is the action that will be dependent on this result? Maybe that you will do more investigation using the step rate test. Okay, maybe that you run PLT to see which zone that is now not taking much injection rate. You can do some stimulation to again restore the injectivity index for these injectors. Okay, another example, for example, for the GOR is increasing more than a 20%. So what is the reason, or what is the expected action? Maybe that you will shock your walls, okay, to decrease the drawdown. Maybe that you will run some saturation logs into some wells. Maybe that some wells which will be gas out, it will be sidetracked to a more down dip location to get the oil which is existing into the oil rim. So like this, okay, this is will be the total, or that is the complete, you can complete the reservoir surveillance plan for the four parties. Let's take a practice or example for the practice for the reservoir surveillance to see what is the importance for the reservoir surveillance. Actually, we have a field that is called Mahogany Field. This field is located into Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, it is producing gas, and you can see that from the geology from this field, it is very, very complicated. Okay, we have different sand bodies. Okay, and for every sand bodies, we wanted to produce as much as we can. Also into this field for the sand production. Okay, so now you remember what is the first step into the reservoir surveillance. The first step into the reservoir surveillance to set what our goal. So what our goal is that we want to get as much as gas from this field to maximize the recovery factor. Okay, what is the risk that we have? The risk that we have two risks. The first risk is that we have some sand production that will affect the well integrity, the casing integrity, and will do some erosion into the casing. Also, we have some water production. We have increasing water production. Okay, so that is the risk that we have, and we wanted to mitigate into our surveillance plan. So when we are checking what are the available tools, so you can see that we can have annulus monitoring, the pressure of the annulus. We can do RST, we can do well test, we can do some production logging, we can take some samples, we can measure every day the wellhead pressure, temperature, and the choke size. We can have a pressure test or the build up test for the wells. We can record the MDT into the new wells and so on. Okay, but not all of these tools are beneficial into our case. Okay, so what are the tools that it is beneficial into our case? Again, going back to the objective or the uncertainty or the risk that we have. So we have sand production. So sand production, in that case, we have a tool. We can install some sensor to detect the sand production. Okay, so we will use, or we will have a decision to apply this technology for the sand production detection. Also, we have aquifer encroachment. Okay, we have the oil water contact is rising into our reservoir. So in that case, what are the tools that will be beneficial for our case? The annulus pressure monitoring, for sure, no. Production test, yes, it will help us. The RST, yes, it will monitor the saturation. Hydrocarbon sample, no. The wellhead pressure, no. Well test, yes, the well test, it can detect the constant pressure boundary that will be indication for the oil water contact rising. Maybe the MDT, okay. The caliber, no. The water analysis, no. gas lift survey, no. Sand detection, no, for in case for the water cut increasing. Okay, so so that is the data that, or that are the tools that was focused or was mainly selected for the surveillance. The well test, the RST, the well test, I mean here, the build up testers, the MDT, and the sand detection. So we are focusing into our reservoir surveillance plan into these tools. So you can see that one of the tools that was used, it is the well test. Okay, and will test for every period of time. Will test for every period of time. So we can see that. We can see here, for example, we have multiple tests. For example, you can see here a test that was done into June 2007. Another test was done into February 2008. Another test that was done into September 2008. Okay, so what is the result for this well test? Actually, for the result, you can see that for the green one. So you can see this boundary, okay? This boundary is detected as a constant pressure boundary, okay? So constant pressure boundary into a drawdown test, okay? So the boundary location was at this location, okay? This is the distance from the well. Then after, you can see from June 2007 to February, almost about 8 months. So we can see that this boundary is coming closer to the well. Then when we do a test after about 7 months, we see that the boundary is very close to the well. So that will indication or indicate for the oil water contact rising. Okay, so now we know that we have an aquifer that is connected to our reservoir, okay? And we now detect what is the existing depth for the oil water contact, okay? So we have also different types, as we mentioned that we have different types of the data that can acquire into the reservoir surveillance. For example, the open hole logs into the new wells, LWD, the cased hole logging, the production test, the injection test, the pressure and temperature into during the build-up test and the drawdown tests. So, for example, let's see what are the issues that we may have. For example, we have cement integrity issues. Okay, we have failure into the cement. So in that case, we wanted to know what is the cement bond. Okay, so what is the tool? So that is the tool that we have. We can use the conventional tools for the CBL, VDL, or the USET, or in case that we are using a low weight cement, so especially for a mature field. So in that case, it will be the USET or the ultrasonic. It won't be beneficial for our case. So we can use another tool, which will be the IPC. For example, we have some well bore damage or well bore problems. For example, we have corrosion or erosion. So we wanted to know what is the depths at which we have corrosion or erosion into the tubing or the casing. So in that case, we wanted to have some, or we wanted to use some of the tools like the multi-finger caliber logs or the MTT or the IMIT to see what is the corrosion depths into our casing or into our tubing. Okay, so you can see that table is tabulated or mentioning the uncertainty and the tool that can answer you about this uncertainty. So let's take some examples for the data for the reservoir surveillance. So we can see, starting by the open hole logging, especially for the MDT and RFT, also the integration between the production and the injection data, how we can integrate between them. Well test, the cased hole logging, like the cement quality evaluation and the casing integrity, production logging, RST, and so on. Let's take some examples. So as all of us know about the MDT, so the MDT usually when we are recording some pressure points into our reservoir and maybe also into the aquifer, okay, to extrapolate the two lines and to know that the existing depth for the oil water contact or the gas oil contact in case that we have a gas cap. So usually we are starting by choosing a good facious depth, a good facious depth. So we are because the MDT maybe that it will fail when we have tightness into our reservoir. Then we will measure the reservoir pressure and the mobility. In case that the mobility is good, okay, more than 0.5, so in that case we can analyze to see what is the reservoir fluid existing at this depth. So we will do some bumping out and we can use the LFA, the liquid fluid analyzer or the optical fluid analyzer, okay, and then we can take a sample. Okay, this is the workflow for the MDT. Okay, so one example from the MDT. Okay, one example of the uncertainty that can be answered by the MDT, it will be for sure the reservoir pressure. Okay, because you see here we have the drawdown, okay, during the pretest, and we have the build up. Okay, so we will acquire the reservoir pressure. Okay, so the MDT it will answer us about the reservoir pressure. Also, it can give you some rough estimation for the mobility or the permeability for your reservoir. Whether your reservoir is tight, so in that case, if your reservoir is very tight, usually the MDT it won't be successful to retrieve any pressure point into your reservoir. So in your estimation for the productivity index for your reservoir, you should take this information as input to calculate the productivity index. Okay, so you don't have much high expectation for the productivity from this well. Okay, if the mobility is very high, okay, and your reservoir permeability is moderate, so usually for the high mobility, the extreme high mobility, usually it is indicating that you have a water into this interval. Okay, so you should take a sample, okay, to confirm whether this oil, whether this water. Okay, also the MDT, as we mentioned, it can give by extrapolating the two lines, one line into the oil, one line into the oil, one line into the water, one line of the gas. It can give you the depth for the gas oil contact or the oil water contact. Okay, and also even if you didn't have a sample into from the MDT, based on the gradient, you can select or you can determine whether you have a gas, whether you have an oil, whether you have a water, based on the gradient that we have from this line. Okay. Uh, Also, another example, like the integration between the production and the injection data. For example, you can see this example of a certain well, okay, or a two wells. One is producer, okay, the two chart for producer, and this chart for injector. So you can see into the above chart, we are plotting the orange here. The orange here representing the allocated liquid volume. Okay, the liquid. Okay, the orange is representing the liquid, and the green is the oil, and the blue here is the water ton. And we can see here, we have the DFL, okay, the brown here, it is the DFL. And we have also, after installing ESP into this well, we have recording the intake pressure for the ESP. Also, we have the SGS or the static pressure survey for this well. So this for the producer. About the injectors, we have just the injection daily, the injection rate for the wood. Okay, so what is the uncertainty that we have, or the question that I wanted to answer? The question that I wanted to answer whether this producer is affected by this injectors or this injector or not. So let us see the data. For example, you can see or you can recognize that the DFL is continuous to decrease, and you can see also the liquid rate is continuous to decrease. Okay, and when you start to inject, you can see that the liquid rate increased again and the DFL increased again. Okay, that's good indication that we have some connection between or some effect for this injection into the production. Okay, then you can see that the injection rate is continue to decrease for some reason. Okay, you can see this decrease, and also the DFL is decreasing, and again the liquid rate is decreasing. Okay, and you see here another cycle for the injection, increasing of the injection. So when increased, the DFL again is increased. Okay, and when the injection rate is decreasing, we can see that DFL is decreasing, the static pressure also is decreasing, and the DF or the liquid rate is continue or start to decrease. Okay, after some period, okay, we can see that when the production started again into this well, you can see that without any injection, the liquid rate is continue to decrease, and also the intake pressure dropped a lot of value into the pressure. Okay, we have a drop into the intake pressure. Okay, so we can see that we have clear significance or clear signature for the injection onto this producer. Okay, so by integrating the injection and the production data, you will see that which injector is affecting, or this injector is affecting the production for the offset wells or not. Okay, maybe that we have, yani for example, if we assume that when we stop the injection, no effect into the DFL, no effect for the liquid rate. So in that case, we will think that we don't have the effect for the injection into the production. And into that case, if you don't have an effect, so you will stop injection, because in that case, you have additional cost for the injection without any benefit into the production. So it is very important, or one of the important data that we are recording or into our reservoir surveillance plan. It is the pressure into the injection, into the production, like the DFL, or in case that you have ESP equipped with some sensors, it will be also important for you to monitor the production performance and also the effect for the injection. Another example for the reservoir surveillance data, it is the well test. Simply, what is the well test? Well test is that you have injection or a production well, then you are doing some action and listen to the reaction of the well. Okay, for example, we have a producing well, you are changing, or you are changing the production rate, and let's monitor how the pressure will change. For example, I will close. Close means build up. So we will monitor how the pressure is building up. Okay, maybe that we are doing some interference test. Okay, for example, between the injection and the production. So in that case, I will close the injection and see what is the effect of the pressure in. I will close the injection and I will monitor the pressure into the production well. So just simply, the well test is that we have a well, we will do an action and listen to the reaction. Listen to the reaction. So, what is the tool or what is the data that we should expect to receive after doing this water test, this well test? Usually, we will know what is the drainage radius of the production well, what is the average permeability for this well, okay, for the reservoir around this well. Maybe also we will have estimation if this will have a damage. So if we have a damage and we have some stimulation tools like fracturing or acid stimulation, so we can use to enhance the productivity for this well and to get more potential from this well. Also, we wanted to we can also know what is the distance for the boundaries. Okay, as we mentioned into the case for mahogany field, already we see what is the benefit for the well test to see the encroachment of the water or the oil water contact rising into our reservoir. Okay. يعني one of the examples that we have, in case that, for example, you have exploration well. Okay, usually we are drilling the exploration well into the most up depth for our structure. Okay, so we don't expect that we have oil water contact into this exploration. However, yeah, we want to know what is the oil in place. Okay, above the oil water contact. So you just simply do a well test, and from the well test you will estimate the distance of the oil water contact, and to do the distance for the oil water contact you can يعني actually for the well test uh, it will help you to go deeply into your reservoir. For example, if you acquire a core data, so the core data it will estimate the permeability into some point into this well. Okay. However, the permeability that is will be acquired from the well test, it is the average permeability of the reservoir around this well. So it will have much depth of investigation into your well. Maybe that also you extend this test to have a return for the depletion wave to the from the boundary, so you can also identify the boundaries distance to your well. Also examples for the reservoir surveillance data, like the kissed hole logging. So for the kissed hole logging, actually we have the cement, we have a cement, we have the casing integrity logs, the production data, the RST, the kissed hole resistivity. For example, the cement quality evaluation logs like the CBL, the SPT, the USET. Okay, يعني usually for the cement evaluation logs we have يعني we have 3 levels of the or we have 4 levels of the tools. The first level, it is the conventional CBL and the VDL. Okay, CBL and VDL, it is just recording two properties. The first one, it is the transient time, the time that the wave will take from the receiver until from the transducer or from the source of the sonic until it is received again to the tool. Okay, so this is the first property that measured by the conventional tools for the CBL VDL. The second one, it will be the amplitude. The amplitude it will of this wave, it will be high or it will be attenuated, so it will be low. Okay, this is the conventional CBL VDL. Okay, if you wanted to have more accuracy or more focusing, okay, because the CBL VDL it is measuring average amplitude. Okay, maybe that you have a channel into a certain side into your casing, so we wanted to map this. That is why you can go for the higher level like the SPT or the RPT. Okay, the segmented or the radius incremented bone. That is why you have different sensors into different orientation. So you are covering all the circle for your case. Okay, يعني it will help us more because it has more representation for the cement, because it can give you a cement map that will be easier for you to interpret the cement quality. Then the second or the third level for the cement evaluation, it will be the USET, which it will use ultrasonic, and it is measuring a different property, which is the acoustic impedance. Acoustic impedance, the Z, is equal to the density multiplied by the velocity. Okay, so it will help us to overcome a certain disadvantage into the CBL VDL, which is that it will be able to identify that channels or the micro channels into the cement. Okay, that is the advantage for the USIT. Also, it can help you to evaluate the casing itself. Okay, in case that you are unlucky and you are low weight cement in case that you are having a depleted reservoir and you are using a low weight cement. So in that case, the usage, it won't help you. Okay, so you will go to the last level for the elementary quality evaluation logs, which will be the IPC, which it will measure another property that is called the fluxural attenuation. Okay, so that is a summary for the cement quality evaluation logs. Let's take simple examples, okay, like using the conventional CBL VDL. So you can see the CBL VDL, okay, so you see that the CBL is very high. The CBL is very high. That means that you are dealing with a free pipe, okay? Even you don't need to go to for the VDL. You will see that the CBL is very high, so you will see that we have a poor semen. Another example, you see that we have here almost a high CBL, but into يعني here it is a lower level of the CBL. Okay, in that case you will go to the VDL. So the VDL is saying that we have some batches. For example, you see this low CBL, it is having here for the VDL we are subtracting or يعني we dividing the track to three divisions. The first one, it will be for the casing. Okay, if you have a good casing cement, so you shouldn't see these lines here. Okay, for example, you have moderate cement here. That is why you don't see clearly the lines for the case. In case this is the first segment of the VDL. The second one, it will be for the formation. Okay, if you see clear formation, if you see this is waves of the formation, for example, you see here we have a little good cement. So you see the curvature for the formation. So in that case, the formation could reach, or the formation sound could reach to the tool again. That means that we have good cement bond between the cement and the formation. Okay, and the last one, it will be for the mud. Okay, that is not important to us. Okay, so in our case, you see that we have some batches for the cement. Okay, so we have here good cement, bad cement, and so on, so on, so on. That is why in overall it is a medium cement case. Coming here, this is good cement. Why? Because the CBL, you can see it is low. Okay, and you see that the casing arrivals is very not clear, and we have a clear formation arrivals. Then we have the mud. Okay, so this is three cases or three examples for the CBL VDL. Let's go to another tools for the casing integrity. In case that you have a well and this well is producing sand or producing some corrosive fluids like CO2, H2S. Okay, so in that case, you should care about the integrity for the casing. Okay, in case that you have corrosion or erosion, especially for mature fields. So as your field is going mature, okay, the wells is producing for a long time, so you should consider the corrosion erosion into your casing. So that is why we have different types of the logs to measure or to that consider the casing integrity, like the multi-finger caliper logs and electrical potential electromagnetic inspection and the borehole video cameras. As a total definition or a total idea, or overall idea, multi-finger, it is just a caliper. It is just a caliper, but it has more fingers. You can see more fingers than the caliper that we are using into our open hole. Okay. Uh, for electrical and electromagnetic, its idea is that when we have a corrosion, so this corrosion is happening due to a microcurrent. So this microcurrent, when increasing, that means that we have a corrosion into this casing or into this depths. Okay, that is why we have this electromagnetic or the electrical loops. Okay, borehole video, it is just from its name. It is just a video that will locate from the video. It will locate the depths at which you have corrosion. Okay, so you can see this is the photo for the multi-finger tool that we are using. We can use it into the tubing. We can use also into the casing. Okay, and we can see that two types, okay, for the multi-finger looks. Okay, this one is the basic. You can see that for every finger we have a curve. So when you see some distortion into some fingers and the others are not, so in that case that we have a certain hole, okay, a certain hole or certain casing deformation at this depth. Okay, so this is the basic multi-finger caliber look, and some companies are also having a 3D plot like this. You can see that we have some casing deformation here, some enlargement of the casing here, and so on, so on, so on. So, this type, some companies are providing something like this. Some companies are just providing this the curves for the fingers or the caliber fingers for the multi or the MFC look. For sure, the BLT, everyone know the importance for the BLT when you have a well, okay, and this well is producing from different intervals. And for example, the water cut started to increase into this well, so you wanted to know which interval is producing this water. Also, if you have a higher or increasing GUR, so you wanted to see which interval is producing more gas, okay. So this is the main benefit from the BLT. Okay, in some cases, okay, maybe also you wanted to see if we have flow behind the casing. For example, you have here a water layer. Okay, so if you have something into the cement here, so this water is not produced directly. No, it will go behind the casing, then produced through the open intervals. So the temperature log, it will identify this flow behind the case. Okay, sensors that we have into the BLT, usually we have different sensors. We have the spinner that will measure the flow rate. We have the manometer that will measure the density. Okay, we have the temperature also, in which it will identify the entries of the fluids. It will identify also the flow behind the casing. Okay, we have also the pressure. So the pressure, it will help you to know the productivity, the pressure inside the well bore, by which you will identify the productivity index for each interval. For example, we have this example for the BLT. Okay, you see we have 4 intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4. When we analyze the data for the BLT, we see that, for example, this is the gradiometer. Okay, it is measuring the density. So you can see that we have an opposite for this interval, we have some change into the density. And in opposite of this interval, no change into the density. In opposite of this interval, we have decrease into the density. Okay, so maybe that this interval is producing more water than this interval. Okay, so that is the first information. Second information is that we don't have any change into the fluid density in opposite of this perforation. So that means two options or two scenarios. The first scenario is that for this interval is not producing at all, or this interval is producing the same fluid density as the below intervals. Okay, let's go to the temperature. Okay, so let's go to the temperature. So you can see that the temperature is having the same as the density. Okay, we have also deflection here, but no deflection in opposite of this perforation. Let's see our spinner. So you can see this is spinner. Okay, so you can see in opposite of this interval, we have some deflection, a minor deflection. And here we don't have any deflection. And here we have high deflection. By the way, this is not interpretation. It is just qualitative interpretation. Okay, because the reservoir management engineer is not required, is not a must to do the interpretation or the quantitative interpretation by himself. Okay, usually it is provided by the service company. Okay, but يعني into some companies, the reservoir or the petrophysicist will do this interpretation. But in general, you should have the logic for the BLT, even if you have the raw data, so you can analyze the raw data qualitatively. Okay, you see which interval is taking, which interval is producing, which is interval that not sharing at all. So you can see here for this interval, no contribution at self. So can anyone tell me, so what your decision into that case for this interval? Huh? For this interval, huh? What can be your decision? Can you tell me into the Zoom chat? Huh? If this interval that we know it is producing oil or it will producing oil, huh? What we can do to make this perforation to start to share again. Yes, thank you all. Yes, just to do stimulation. So this kind of the operation that we are calling selective stimulation. So in that case, we will do stimulation especially for this interval to make this interval to produce or to reshare again into our production. Then we have the RST. It is also a tool that very helpful for us. Okay, a general idea for this tool, it is merging neutrons, and when this neutrons is coming or to the molecules into the formation, it is captured. Then this capturing has a result of gamma ray. So the tool, it will measure the gamma ray that is responding from the formation. Okay, the information that we are getting from the RST, the formation lithology, the porosity, water saturation, and some other applications like the wellbore fluid and so on. Okay, so some example. We have, you see this well. Initially, this is the open hole analysis. You can see this is the initial analysis, okay, before any production. So you see, this is the green one, it is the oil, and based on which we did some perforation and produced from some time. After some time, we started to see some water production, and we are doing injection into the same field. So we can see initially, you see here this curve, okay? The red curve is representing the water cut at the initial, the water cut initial. So you can see the water cut almost about 20%. Okay. After some time of the period, you see this is the water cut, the purple one. Okay. This is the water cut from the RST. So the difference here, it will tell you about the flushed oil. This kind of analysis that's called the flushing analysis, okay, or the oil flushing analysis, okay. So you will see this interval, for example, it is flushed by the water, okay. This interval, not very flushed, okay. So what about the other intervals? You can see that is almost the same. So, can anyone tell me what is the decision that can be taken for this well? What can be the decision that can be taken for this well? Yes, shut off. And we have some BCO, some behind the casing opportunities that can be perforated. Yes, thank you. Okay. Last tool that into our session, for sure, it is not last tool that we are using into reservoir surveillance, but the kissed hole resistivity. Okay, kissed hole resistivity, its idea simply is very simple, that we have open hole resistivity. Okay. Okay, so if we have high resistivity, means we have oil. If we have low resistivity, means water. Okay. But what about the kissed hole? So after some period of the time, okay, after some period of the production, we are measuring the resistivity, but through the casing, then compare between the two resistivities. Okay, if the resistivity is decreased, that means that we have higher amount of the water. Okay, so you can see this is example. Okay, we have a perforation for this well, we have a perforation here, we have a perforation here. Okay, then you can see this points is representing the kissed hole resistivity, And the blue curve is representing the initial resistivity. Okay, we have three zones or three perforations, A, B, C. Can anyone tell me which perforation that have a depletion into the oil or a higher amount of the water saturation? Huh? Which zone that now is depleted? Uh, A, B, C. Which zone? Okay, so the zones that we have difference in between the cased hole and the open hole resistivity. So in that case, this is the depleted zone. So you can see that into C, into the interval C, we have almost the same resistivity as the open hole. However, here, however, here we can see that we have difference. The cased hole resistivity is lower than the open hole resistivity. That indicating that we have depletion into the oil. Okay, and for A it is same. So in that case we can say that the increasing water cut is coming due to the production from the interval number B. Okay, uh, so I think that was the last slide into our session, and now let's answer some questions from the chat. uh, let's see. Let's see the questions into the Zoom chat. So we have a question that MDT will give permeability will give K will give permeability. Will test also giving permeability. Core also has given permeability. What is the more representative? Okay, the K average representing the reservoir into the FDP reports, into the FDP or reports. I know while testing sampling larger volume, dynamic status, and so on. Okay, so actually MDT, you can use the mobility from the MDT into your estimation for the productivity index. In case that you don't have any offset wells, or you don't have any analogy for estimating the productivity index. Okay, so the MDT, it will give you rough idea about the mobility for your reservoir. Okay, this is first thing. For the core, the permeability that's coming from the core, you can use it in case of you can use it for the reservoir modeling. Okay, getting relation between porosity and the permeability. Permeability coming from the well test, it is more general. It is average permeability. You can use it for the productivity index estimation. Okay. If your reservoir is more homogeneous, so the core permeability and the permeability coming from the well test, it will be very close. Okay. Uh, Another question, ultrasonic logs are short wavelengths, means that shallow uh, ultrasonic logs are short wavelengths, means shallow depth of investigation. So it can see only cement casing or an internal surface of the casing. So the VDBL is only log who shows you all the wave train from tool to the formation. As you mentioned that for ultrasonic is having short wavelengths. That is why it can give you more details than the CPL and the VDL. That is why the ultrasonic is capable to see the channel into the cement. Uh, can we have this PPT material by the end of the class? Okay, I will ask Reservoir Solutions. You can contact with them. Uh, Another question, we need to run a BNL to detect which fluid behind the casing before make a decision to reperforate or stimulate. In case, for sure, yes, in case that you don't have any indication for whether this perforation it will share oil or not, sure you should have RST. But as I mentioned into our example here, okay, you can do stimulation in case that you are sure that this interval it will produce oil. For example, if you have an offset well, and this well is down dip or same level with your well here, and this well is producing from same interval with very low water cut. So in that case, you can do the stimulation without running the RST. In case that you are not sure, so you will compensate this shortage into the knowledge by using another tool, which will be the RST into our case. For example, yeah. What is the meaning for the MDT? It is the pressure data. It can measure the pressure. It can measure the pressure into the open hole interval. Thank you all. So I think that was the last question into our session today. Uh, Another question that we just received. We run another resistivity look to identify the depletion. Yes, it will be the kissed hole resistivity. However, in one case, that the kissed hole resistivity, it won't be very effective. Huh? Can anyone tell me which case? Okay, so actually the case when you have a fresh water formation into your formation. Okay, in case that you have fresh water into your formation, the cased hole resistivity, it will be the same as the open hole resistivity, whatever the depletion that you have into your reservoir. Okay, so I think that is all from my side. Thanks for your attendance and listening during this session. I enjoyed by this session with you. So I think that is the turn for reservoir solution. Anyone having any other questions? Okay, so thank you all and hope you good night and assalamu alaikum. For the next session for reservoir solutions, I think you can follow their groups. يعني. Okay, so thank you.